Welcome to AGAPE Social Justice, where we focus on love, truth, and justice. Today's episode is to highlight Second Chances Month, which is in April of every year. And when I think about second chances, there's no way that I can have this conversation without talking to Daryl Woods Sr. And I'm excited that you all get an opportunity to hear his amazing story. And we'll end with telling you how you can get involved in giving people second chances as well. Daryl, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was doing my research on you, I found a ton of articles, a lot of information. I know you are an activist and you do a lot of work in the criminal justice space, but I want you to give the listening audience an opportunity to tell them who you are, what you're currently doing, and then we'll delve a little bit more into your story.
Absolutely. I am Elder Daryl Woods. I am an elder at Greater Grace Temple.
Okay.
I am also the founder and CEO of Fighting a Good Fight. I am the former regional coordinator for Nation Outside, and I am a father. I'm a person who have lived experience when it comes to the criminal legal system. I was a person who was condemned to life without the possibility of parole, and I served 28 years and 11 months in prison.
28 years. Yeah, every time I hear that, it gives me pause, to hear 28 years and see you sitting before me, knowing that you were given a life sentence. Let's take a step back and let's walk people through your journey. How did you get here in terms of being formally incarcerated? I know you were convicted of a crime that you didn't commit and served that number of years. So walk us through what that looked like. What year was it? What was the charge? How did this all occur?
In 1990, I was a wayward young man involved in the drug trade.
Okay.
And I found myself, long story short, in a drug house with a number of men. The drug deal went bad, and someone ended up getting shot and killed. Me and my little cousin and my co-defendant was at the home. And because we didn't turn ourselves in or didn't cooperate with law enforcement, they eventually charged us as aiding and abettors. I was 18 years old. He was 17 years old. And we ultimately was found guilty and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And it was just a tumultuous journey for us inside the prison system. We find ourselves 18 years old inside a prison, 17 years old inside a prison. We didn't pull the trigger. We didn't encourage anyone to pull the trigger. We didn't even know no one knew that was going to happen because it happened spontaneous out of argument. We weren't even in the area when it happened. And so, but we were not innocent people. We was in a place that we didn't supposed to be in. We was doing things that we ain't supposed to be doing. However, that don't give people a reason or the state the reason to charge you for something that you did not do. And ultimately, jury found us guilty. But in 2003, our cases were overturned. The judge who presided over our trial concluded that we was convicted on false and perjured testimony and that we was wrongfully convicted, and he overturned our conviction. Then it was a extensive appeal process that took place by the prosecutor office, and they ultimately was able to get our new trial taken back. And it took years and years for us to be able to continue to advocate and fight for our freedom. We went through the Michigan Court of Appeals, the Michigan Supreme Court. We went through the Federal Appeals Court, and ultimately all the way up to the United States Supreme Court.
Wow.
In appealing our cases. We had some victories, then we had losses, then we had victories, then we had losses, and then the conclusion of the whole matter when it comes to the court system is that the United States Supreme Court did not want to hear our case, so our backs was against the wall. It didn't look.
And why didn't they want to hear the case?
Because that's how the Supreme Court is. They only hear a smidget of amount of cases. Less than 1% cases that go up to the United States Supreme Court is heard. or even accept it. They're not even going to give you a chance,
Wow.
and so it's a tough
Okay.
thing to be able to get some action in the United States Supreme Court. And it's tough in the Michigan Supreme Court as well. They
Okay.
only hear a certain amount of cases or accept them into their court.
Okay.
Most cases are decided on a court of appeals level or on a lower court level. And so it's a struggle
To
in
get it
those
done.
situations,
Okay. So I know you had a lot of support that got you up to that point. You got some attention and support to get to that level. But before we go there, I heard you say that there was some perjury involved in the court case.
Yes,
Can you elaborate on that in terms of how that
absolutely.
unfolded?
Absolutely. We had a hearing from 2001 to 2003
Hmm.
before the judge who presided over the trial, Judge Crockett.
Okay.
And during that time, we was able to present witnesses. We also was able to bring in one of the prosecutor chief witnesses
Okay.
and put him on the stand. He fully recanted his testimony.
Mm.
And it was concluded after all these hearings and after all of the additional witnesses and testimony that we was convicted on false and perjured testimony because the witness initially stated that we did things that we didn't do.
Hmm.
They didn't ever say that we pulled the trigger, but
Hmm.
they created
A
scenarios
story.
because they were at the time in trouble with the law,
That's what I was going to
and
ask you.
and we did not know it at the time.
That's what I was going to ask you. So when I have conversations with people about the criminal justice system, there are a couple of things that come up, and I just heard somebody mention this recently. One is that there was some sort of a law that existed years ago, and I don't know if it was during the time that you experienced this, but if you were just in the vicinity of something happening, that they were able to charge you criminally. And so I'm told that there are people who still have a record from back in that time when if you were just in the area, you got charged along with everybody else. And the second thing is that the 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 system often uses people who are criminals
Yeah,
who committed a crime and want to get a lesser charge or whatever plea they can get. And so oftentimes they're witnesses in cases and they cause innocent people to go to prison.
absolutely. Well, the witnesses usually are tainted, and it's about who's going to tell first,
Mm-hmm.
or who's being squozed the most. And so when you had these two witnesses in my case, one was convicted and sentenced to 5 to 20 years in prison,
Mm.
and went to prison for a small amount of time and asked for appeal bond and was out on an appeal bond when this crime occurred.
Mm.
And so he lied to cover up his actions. His appeal bond was never revoked, and he was allowed to stay out,
Wow.
even though he was involved in another drug transaction in which someone lost their life.
Oh, wow.
And his sentence was ultimately reduced from 5 to 20 to 1 to 20.
So I'm sorry, I'm really struggling with this because this kind of confirms to me that this is why we see this pattern of behavior over and over again because it's incentivized for you to come forth and lie. And
Absolutely.
people see that you can get away with it. And so why would they not do, I mean a
Yes.
person who lacks the moral character, right? Why would you not do it when you see that it's working in your favor?
Right.
We've got to change that.
We got to change it, and we are changing, and we're fighting, and we are a part of the solution. I was very glad to see in the governor's budget this year that she put an extra $1 million to help fund the Conviction Integrity Unit
Mm,
in the state of Michigan. And so that comes from advocacy.
right.
That comes from hard work, like from
Mhm.
people like yourself and
Mhm.
others who believe that this criminal legal system need to be transformed.
Absolutely.
And we definitely need more resources in these conviction integrity units.
Yes.
Since I've been out, I've been able to see Washington County start a conviction integrity unit. I watched Oakland County start a conviction integrity unit. I watched Macomb County start a conviction integrity unit, and even the state of Michigan. And that's good and dandy, but we need to make sure that they are resourced properly
Right.
so that we can be able to save as many innocent lives who are languishing behind the Michigan Department of Corrections.
Absolutely, because we have a history of incarcerating people who are innocent.
Yes.
And you're right, in Oakland County, as you know, I volunteer with the prosecutor's office for
Yes.
the Racial Justice Advisory Council. And I've sat and I've watched how this has unfolded as well with the Conviction Integrity Unit. And our county executive, Dave Coulter, was, gave the funding without question. And
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, there's so many cases, and I like to see that unit get expanded as well, so even more people can have the opportunity for their cases to be heard. I mean, I can't even imagine being in prison a year, let alone 28 years
In 11 months.
and 11 months, knowing that I didn't commit the crime and wondering, God, who's coming for my rescue?
Mm-hmm.
But in your situation, you had support. So walk us through, how did this happen? Were you writing people? Were your family advocating? Like, how did you get to the point that you had pastors and other people advocating on your behalf?
Absolute good question. First and foremost, I was at a fork in the road when I went in prison. Either I was going to sink or I was going to swim. I was going to be a victim or I was going to be a victor.
Yeah.
And so I chose to be a victor. I decided to swim and not sink. And so I dedicated my life to the Lord and committed my way to the Lord. Fully and completely. I wasn't a part of any of the prison antics. I didn't sell drugs. I wasn't a part of any of those things. Didn't judge nobody. But in the same token, I knew I had to make a decision as a man. It says when I was a child, I thought as a child, I reasoned as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. And so I put those childish things away and began to develop myself. An eighth grade dropout, was able to get my GED within 2 years of my incarceration because I dedicated myself to studying. I read the Bible from Genesis to Revelations and from Revelations to Genesis numerous times.
Wow.
And I was dedicated to doing what was right. I ended up becoming part of the NAACP. We founded the Detroit branch NAACP Prison Program Committee at the Ryan Correctional Facility.
Okay.
And my mentor, Stan Sekou Nelson, and Dwight was shot. And many of those brothers, old school brothers, wrapped their arms around me and poured into me. And so we had legal beagles coming in there like Mike Steinberg, who is now a professor at the University of Michigan in law school. He helped start the ACLU legal department. And we had Judge Arthur Turner, who was a federal court judge. All these, and the list goes on and on. Valerie Newman. All these people were our teachers in the law. And I got into the minister training program there. I was dedicated to that and dedicated to ministry. So I developed in all in vocation and also into dedicated myself to the ministry and to the law, and became the leader in both of those areas. And so I became the leader of the church, and I became the leader ultimately of the NAACP, in which we was under the direction of Reverend Wendell Anthony. And so we had a lot of programs that we established in there, and we had a lot of relationships that we developed. We invited Congress people, we invited judges, we pastors and leaders, and my pastor, my former pastor, Bishop David Ellis, he was dedicated and staying connected with me. And when he passed away, Bishop Charles Ellis continued to pastor me and encourage me and inspire me even while I was behind prison bars. And so I had a lot of connections. Pastor Charles Adams, Reverend Kenneth Flowers, who was a champion and who helped lead the effort and get me out. All those type of folks, they wrapped their arms around me. They seen the ministry, they seen my dedication to service, and wanted to do something about it.
Right. That's amazing. And I just have to put this out here. I know you're aware of this, but our listening audience does not know. You knew my husband before I even knew you. And he brought students to come see you while you were incarcerated, and you made an impact on my husband during that time. So you also made an impact on law enforcement too, and had those
Oh,
connections.
oh, absolutely, unequivocally, without a shot of a doubt. Your husband, Walter, is someone who has a golden heart
I
and
appreciate that.
who cares about the community, who cares about children, who cares about people that's suffering. Although he was a lieutenant inside the Michigan State Police.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
He said you gave him a title there,
Okay.
a promotion there.
Well, he was a leader in that. You know, he should have been the colonel, because this guy, he came in with great dedication. First of all, he was a person who understood the serve and protect aspect of law enforcement, and not the protect and serve.
Mm,
Sometimes we say protect and
mm,
serve. That's a whole different scenario.
mm.
But when you talk about serve and protect, understanding that service is the first aspect of policing, then protecting, and so he came in and brought children in our program. We
Mhm.
created the NAACP Youth Deterrent program, in which judges would even sentence young people to our program.
Wow.
And that's how I met Walt. He came in, he heard about our program, and he was bringing groups of young people to our program. And we service thousands of young people.
Wow.
We help them get summer jobs. We help them to get summer camp. We raise tens of thousands of dollars to make sure that they had school supplies and other needed
When
necessities.
you say we, you mean you and incarcerated individuals at that time helped to raise money for these students.
Oh, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Is this program still going on right now?
The Ryan Correctional Facility was closed down, unfortunately,
Okay.
after I got out. I kept it
Oh,
open a couple of times.
wow.
They tried to close it while I was there before, and Reverend Wendell Anthony and a number of community people rallied around us and made sure that they didn't close that prison. And I'm hoping that the governor and the director would look at that again, because
Mm.
Detroit actually need that, because a strong number of people from the city of Detroit
Mhm.
are incarcerated, and they need to be closer to their families. I understand. I'm glad that they closed prisons,
Mhm.
but Coleman Young fought for this, and a lot of leaders fought for those prisons to be in existence in our community, so that people can have a connection to their family, and then they can
Okay.
also have a number of resources flowing out of it. The mayor of the city of Detroit, Mayor Duggan, I sat down and had dinner with him inside the prison, because he had a program inside the prison
Mm.
in which people were getting high-low training. They was getting culinary arts. They were also getting asbestos removal training, and then the mayor would bring in employers to help them get connected to employment when they transition out of
Wow.
there. It was called the Detroit Demonstration Project,
Mm.
and it was a phenomenal program here in the city of Detroit inside a prison.
Wow.
And so those the type of things that we need to be able to empower the men and women who are incarcerated. So when they transition out with a skill, and they be able to transition out with a job and more
Absolutely.
opportunities.
Absolutely. So have you seen other institutions model what Ryan Correctional Facility had? I know I went to Macomb Correctional Facility years ago, and I went in for a restorative justice, restorative practices
Yeah.
event. And I'm telling you, not only was the food good, not only was the food good that they made, but to watch individuals who had committed murder
hmm
allow you to see their heart
Yeah.
on full display and tell their personal story and tell the mothers of victims
Yeah.
in that circle that I'm sorry for what you went through. I mean, I don't know that I'll ever have an experience like that ever again in my life. It's incredible. And they had a waiting list for people to learn how to be trained in restorative practices.
Absolutely.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to be trained in restorative practices, and we had that going on at the Ryan Correctional Facility. The Ryan Correctional Facility was like the mothership,
Mm,
and a lot of other programs, especially those type of programs, kind of flowed to those other
okay.
institutions. And you probably was in there with Professor Drauss and Henry McClendon when they was doing some
Mm-hmm.
programming over there through the University of Michigan. However, that is what needed. The the victim sensitivity
Mm-hmm.
is vitally important for those who are incarcerated. It's good that we expose those who are incarcerated to those who have been victimized,
Right.
and it need to be those restorative circles need to be in every prison because I believe you can help a lot of people as you expose them to uh, the harm that is caused
Right.
through their actions,
Right.
and so it never failed that some of the rough and toughest people that you bring to those circles and tables, it breaks them.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks them, and it gives them a sensitivity that hey, this is the type of harm that I'm causing
Right.
families and to the
Right.
community, myself, and even my family.
Right.
So absolutely. And I'm for pushing restorative practices, training in every prison.
I love it. I mean, I actually saw more empathy in that circle than sometimes circles I sit in my own community, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yes.
Like, if we
Yes.
real about it.
Yeah.
So I absolutely appreciate that. And so for your life now, you're shaking and moving and doing a lot of things. I see on social media, you go to gas stations and you're training people at the gas stations. You all have shut down gas stations when crimes have been committed to hold people accountable. You're doing so much amazing work for people who are watching and saying, how can I help that brother? Like, what do I need to do to make sure that we plug in so that we know what's happening in the criminal justice system? What do we need, not just in Detroit, but across the state of Michigan, in
Yes.
terms of what we need to do to improve the conditions? Because we got to remember that that's also a
Hmm.
concern for many people, the
Absolutely.
conditions in the prison, but also the training, the resources, the education, setting them up so that the pathway when they transition out as
Yes.
now a formerly incarcerated individual, they have what they need, including housing, because that's an issue for people to get adequate housing,
Absolutely.
employment, and so many other things. What can people do to get plugged into this type of volunteerism?
That's a great question. The NAACP, we have a criminal justice committee. I'm on that committee, the Detroit branch, in which we're advocating for a number of things in terms of policy wise and prevention wise. And I work with a number of organizations, Dignity for Detroit with Teferi Brent. When you talk about the gas station outreach that we do there. Um, we hold them accountable, but we also try to prevent tragedies from happening there by providing good customer service training
Mm.
to these gas station owners because 40% of the crime that occur in the city of Detroit, in particular in urban America, happens around a gas
Oh,
station
wow. I
in a
didn't know
certain
that.
mile radius of a gas station,
Wow.
if not specifically the gas station itself.
Mm.
And so it's vitally important that we train those who want to come do business in our cities
Mm-hmm.
how to be able to service our people.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes there's a great insensitivity towards people. Like if a female come into the store, the worker or the clerk or the owner shouldn't be objectifying her or calling her baby
Right.
and all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And men come in there, what's up, bro? What up,
Mm-hmm.
though? And all that. No, this is a professional establishment, and it need to flow that way from the time the people who is patronizing your business walk in until the time they walk out. We have had people who shot people over some change. We ain't, far as gas station owners, we ain't had them shoot outside of the bulletproof or out through the bulletproof
Bulletproof glass.
glass and shoot people just for stupid reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
so we want to prevent that from happening, and that's why we do some of that training there. I'm also working on policy changes. I would like to see the second look legislation
Yes.
passed. I
Yes.
would like to see good time credits added back. I would like to see people have opportunity for commutations. And I also want to see people, when they transition out of there, they transition into housing and resources and opportunities. And so I work with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Work on a working group there as relates to some of the reentry issues and some of the violence interruption work and things of that nature. And so it's a lot to be done, and we need all hands on deck. And
Yes.
so if anybody want to contact me, they can contact me through you.
Okay.
You know, and I'll be happy to point them in the right direction where they can roll up their sleeves
Okay.
to be able to bring healing in our community.
Okay. All right, brother. I like it. I
Yeah.
love it. Not only are I consider you a brother in Christ, but
Yes.
I look up to you in terms of the work that you do and the spirit in which you do it, the compassion and love that you have for the people. So I really appreciate you. Appreciate you being here and everything that you do in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your great leadership, and thank you for all that you have done and is doing in this space and many other spaces. I look up to
Appreciate it.
you, and I'm inspired by you. I was very, very happy that we came together to deal with the issue with Justice Bernstein. A lot of people don't want to talk about those type of things,
Yeah.
but I think we need to confront those type of issues head on
Yeah.
and bring people together, because it's better for us to turn to each other than
Right.
on each other.
Right. Absolutely. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Well, I just want to let you know that we actually have been in contact with Bernstein's team.
Hmm.
And so prayerfully, he will still be able to come here and talk to us on Agape Social Justice too, because one thing that really resonated with me that you and I talked about is that we need to have redemption and forgiveness for him as well. And so thank you for that, because we're going to have that conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So to our listening audience, we just want to make sure that not only you hear Daryl's heart and understand that he is not alone. There are many, many, many people who are right now incarcerated, who are innocent, who are looking for help, and they need a conviction integrity unit to be fully staffed and fully resourced so that they can get the help that they need, just like Daryl and everybody else who had an opportunity to get a second chance. And for those individuals who are formerly incarcerated and you have this, maybe this stereotype about who you think they are, from now on, I want you to see Daryl's face. I want you to think about the things that he did when he was behind bars and think about the things that he's doing today, because that's what a formerly incarcerated individual can do. They're just like you and I. You and I have a past and things we've done, and it's just that people don't even know about it, right? And so let's have forgiveness, let's have grace, let's love on one another so that we can make sure that we are living in a society that gives second chances. As always, we want you to plug into following us on social media at Agape Social Justice, on Facebook, on Instagram and YouTube. On Twitter, we're at Agape Social Just. And then if you want to reach Daryl, reach out to me. Just go to one of our social media pages. I'll make sure that he gets the message. And until next time, please plug into one of those organizations he mentioned. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you.